So, as I'm filming this, we're just coming up on the holidays, and I was sitting here and I remembered something that happened a number of years ago. I was here, like I am now, and I was preparing to go out to the West Coast to visit some family for the holidays. It was the night before my flight, and a huge blizzard hit. And very quickly, I realized that the flight was canceled. So I called the airline. It was about a week before Christmas. I called the airline and they said that not only was that canceled, but that there were no more flights anytime between then and Christmas, and that I wouldn't make it out for Christmas and I wouldn't make it out for New Year's because everything was booked. And of course, I debated for a while, but ultimately I realized that there was no way I was going there for Christmas. So I was sitting there and thinking, well, what am I going to do for the holidays? Like on many evenings, I was just sitting at home and I was watching Netflix, and it kind of hit me like not only was I not having holidays, um, but I wasn't really getting out and meeting anyone. And it really struck me. For a while I'd just been staying home in the evenings and watching Netflix. So in this video, I'm going to talk about what I did instead. So I was sitting there and it hit me, I'm not going out, I'm not meeting anyone. And I realized that wasn't going to be a very satisfying holiday for me. And it wasn't exactly that I felt like going out, but I did feel like having some holidays and hanging out with people, meeting people. So this thought kind of popped into my head. What if I went out every night for a certain period of time? Um, at the time, I wasn't being very social in terms of going out. So this idea kind of appealed to me as a challenge in a way. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go out every night for 30 days. I don't know why that occurred to me, but the thought sort of hit me, and it was attractive enough that I thought I would do that. So I woke up the next day and I realized that I had made this challenge, and it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, but I thought, okay, let me give this a shot and see where it leads. So I'll describe some of what I experienced in that 30 days, and what worked for me and what was challenging. I will say that once that first night hit, it was the last thing that I wanted to do. I didn't particularly, I wasn't drawn to the idea of going to a new place, and I realized, okay, I need to put some parameters around this challenge. Like, what does it mean? Um, Typically what I would do is I would go to Aikido, and then after Aikido, I might have a bite to eat, but usually I would just come home. So I thought, okay, the challenge is going to be that um, I have to go somewhere new, and I have to stay there for at least one drink before I go home. And it also hit me that I was doing this right at the end of the year in December in New York and in January when it was really cold. But in any case, on the first night, I went out for a quick bite after Aikido. And again, I wanted to go home, but I thought, okay, I committed to have at least one beer. And I remembered that somebody had invited me to a holiday party. So it was still quite early for the party. The party was starting later, but I thought, okay, let me go there and I'll have at least one beer and then I'll go home. And so I did that. And I met a guy when I first got there and we got chatting. One thing that was amazing was that one person could have filled my social calendar for the rest of my life. He was one of these people that was very connected and always knew when something was going on. So that was one of the first things I learned is if you're connecting and meeting with the right people, you don't have to do a lot of legwork. People can share with you what they're doing and good places to go and great events. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But what was amazing, not just that one person was like that, but at that one party, I think I met about four or five people that eventually became very good friends of mine and that I would spend, tons of time with going out in the coming years. As the days progressed, some nights I would go out and I would have a good time, but sometimes I would just go out, find a new place, sit down, have one beer, and I would leave. Um, I did realize that I had a lot of, people would call it social anxiety, but I had a lot of reluctance about going into new places where I didn't know anyone, sitting down, getting comfortable. And so for me, it was a challenge, and it was something that I learned. I realized that, okay, I can be a bit uncomfortable and I can get past that. I learned some tricks. I learned that it's a good idea to meet, whoever works at the place, so that if you go back there, you feel a little bit more comfortable. I also realized that it was perfectly fine to sit there and read a book or not have to focus on other people. And other times I felt more outgoing and I would chat with other people that were at the bar. For this particular challenge, I tried to go out by myself, as opposed to just meeting different friends at bars every night. That is another way that you can do it, and especially if you're particularly nervous going out, that can be a good way to sort of get acclimated, is to grab a buddy to go with, and meet different people at night that can help you feel a little bit more comfortable in your experience. So it was refreshing for me to realize that even though I was uncomfortable in the beginning, I became less uncomfortable over time. I feel like I got good at just going to a bar and sitting down and enjoying myself and reading or meeting people. And the other thing that I learned, or one of the other things that I learned, is there's so many events going on. Now, granted, I'm in New York City, but I think in most towns there are more events going on than we often think about. And events are great places to go and to meet people and to practice getting comfortable meeting new people. There are cooking events, there are wine tasting events. In New York, there's tons of sort of networking events like around entrepreneurship and um, startups and different events around technology. There are also conventions, like I think outside of New York more than here, but even here, there are conventions that are going on a regular basis. And sometimes you'll find a convention with a topic that interests you, and that's a great place to meet people. So, this is one of many challenges that I've given myself, and it sort of, for me, it's usually born out of realizing, like, oh my gosh, there's a whole domain here that I haven't explored, and what would it be like if I was more comfortable in this realm? So that's a little bit about my story of the 30 days. Now, one thing that did happen is there were a couple of days where, for whatever reason, I just couldn't go out. So I wasn't overly strict with myself. If I missed a day, I did make an arrangement that, it was kind of like putting a day on credit. And at the end of the month, I went and finished those days as well. It really turned the end of December and the beginning of January into a very festive time, much more so than it certainly would have been if I was just staying at home that whole time. So I encourage you to give it a shot, and I would love to hear how that goes.